Ancient Egypt had a bunch of different funerary texts throughout the entire length of the civilization, and in this presentation, I am going to cover some of the major ones. The first I'm going to cover is the pyramid text. It dates to the 5th dynasty, King Unas for sure. His pyramid is the first known example of them being found in a large quantity. There is belief that they may have existed before this in pieces, but this is the first time that they are written in a large space all in one. From his time on, they were used for kings, and then after Pepi II, they began to be used for queens as well. Now, despite the belief that these were only used for royal individuals, there are instances in the spells that indicate they may have been used for non-royal individuals. Some of these include multiple spells where the king is making offerings to the deceased, such as the king offering their noble ranks, offering leopard skins, making sure that their sons get the position that the father held. And then there is also examples of spells mentioning local gods, and local gods is used as a placeholder, so that would mean that it would be used where any local god could be put in place there, and that would not be used with the king because that would be a state god. Another thing with the pyramid text is the stars are very important. Within the resurrection texts, the morning star and the constellation we know as Orion are very important. Now, this is a photo of the Pyramid of Unas. As you can see, there are no illustrations whatsoever. It is just rows upon rows of text here, and these are all the various pyramid text spells. Following the pyramid texts, there are the coffin texts. These began to be used in the first intermediate period, however, they became more prevalent in the Middle Kingdom. With the coffin texts, they became no longer strictly royal in the way that they were used. In fact, the largest source for the coffin text stems from various cemeteries of the different nomarchs dating from about the 12th dynasty. With the coffin text, we begin to see some shifts in the spells. It is no longer strictly focused on the soul as it travels through the netherworld at night. Now we have other things added into it, such as the Shoptis. Shoptis are little figures that were buried with the deceased, and there are spells in the coffin text that are used to ensure that these Shoptis would do any work that would be prescribed to the deceased in the afterlife. Now, with the coffin text, we begin to see illustrations and pictures being used, and the coffins become heavily decorated. And here we can see some examples. Here we have the eyes of Horus and Ra, and down here we have a throwback to the Old Kingdom, and that is with the false door. And as you can see, we are starting to get illustrations to go along with the spells. They are very brightly colored in this one. Here you can see that they're starting to get some bright colored, but it's still on a smaller scale. And this will evolve as we move forward. Now, in the New Kingdom, there were various books of the afterlife, and one of them was the Amduat. So it is part of the New Kingdom books of the afterlife. The Amduat was almost completely illustrated in comparison to the previous ones that had either no illustration or just partial illustration. It dates potentially to Queen Hatshepsut or King Thutmose I, though it is unknown for sure. And then King Thutmose III's tomb is laid out in a way to best represent the Amduat. The way he has the spells set up, it represents the 12 hours, and it starts at the head of his coffin and then ends at the foot of his coffin. So his soul would go out from the head of the coffin and come back in through the foot of the coffin. And following him, other kings of the 18th dynasty took inspiration from the Amduat for the way that they built their tombs. And as you can see here, the tomb of Tutmos III was built in kind of an oval shape, which could also represent the cavern of Saqqara, which played a big role in the Amduat. Now, perhaps the most well known of the funerary text is the Book of the Dead. This became popular in the New Kingdom and lasted through to the late period. In it, most of the spells are illustrated, especially by the Ramesside period. The big difference between this book of funerary text and the ones before this is anybody could use these spells as long as they could afford the books that were on sale. Of the different papyri, the Papyrus Ani is perhaps one of the largest collections of spells, and it is very vibrantly colored. Now, within the Book of the Dead, there were no set order for the spells, and the papyri could range in the number of spells used in each book. Some of them had as few as 33 spells in them, and some had as high as 137 spells in them. And the scene that most people recognize as the weighing of the heart stems from the Book of the Dead. And here are two examples of that. In both of them, we see Osiris as he is watching on as Anubis does the weighing of the heart. And we see the heart being weighed against Ma'at, who is the goddess. And in some of the representations, she is depicted as herself on a smaller scale, as we see here. And you can't see it here, but she is in this one as well. And then in others, such as the Papyrus Ani, she is depicted as the feather, which is the hieroglyph for Ma'at. Thank you.